Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome back to our next episode of Toast the Talk. We have come to the most exciting end of an exciting year for Formula One. A lot of things have been happening over the past few weeks. And if you think Netflix was taking over the drama quotient, F1 was like, hold my beer, sorry. And we have a lot more excitement lined up for all of you. There's just so much been happening. And I'm sure all our panelists want to talk about all the drama that we have seen over the last few days, forget over the last few weeks or the last few months. Uh, Netflix writers, all you have to do is watch the races. You don't have to get any more creative because the F1 fraternity is taking care of all the drama. Speaking of drama, it's also Children's Day. All of us as kids have gone through a lot of drama through our life. We've created drama for our parents, or our parents have created drama for us. Before I start off, a great set of panelists that we have today in our Toaster Talk, the F1 show, with F1 fans talking about everything F1. If you're a newcomer to the F1 world, listen in. We'll try to solve a lot of things that are just going over your head, explain what's happening, give you perspectives. If you are going to be dating someone who's an F1 fan, we can give you stuff that'll help you sound really F1 smart in front of them. So tune into our show and listen to some of the great panelists that we have today. I'll ask each of the panelists, since it's Children's Day, to share. F1 has a rich history of father-son duos. If you can each one share about a father-son duo that you know about in the F1 fraternity, since we're celebrating Children's Day. So I'm going to go with the order that I have on my screen. First up, I have Nären.
Okay, thanks for the opportunity, Vivek. So we have a lot of father-son duo, and my first pick of the choice would be obviously the Shumis, the Michael Schumacher and Mick Schumacher. Mick Schumacher he's in his rookie team, and his godfather now is Sebastian Vettel, who considered Michael Schumacher as his godfather. So if I have to consider a father-son duo who is currently not making that much news, but also making news, would be Michael and Mick.
Yeah, and I think since I did bring up Netflix sometime back, we do have the documentary called Schumacher, in which Mick does mention quite a bit about Michael from a child's perspective. And it's very interesting to hear that, right? Like, we all see Michael Schumacher as a champion. How was it for Mick to grow up in those shadows? Next up, we have Vignesh on our panel. Welcome, Vignesh.
Hi, all. Yeah, so my father and son would be the most obvious, and I would go with Nico Rosberg and Keke Rosberg. Both have been world champions in their own right. Both have played and focused their games against world champions, and both of their championship was not an easy task for both of them. I remember both competing extremely hard for that single championship, and for that reason, those are my father and son for the day.
And I'm sure Bottas kind of just saw Nico Rosberg's career and he thought he probably had a similar chance there. Didn't turn out to be so. Next up, we have Twinkle. Welcome, Twinkle.
Hey, so I guess my favorite father-son duo would be Carlos Sainz Sr. and Jr. So although Carlos Sainz Sr. was never traditionally a F1 guy, but he was a world rally champion. I think one other very funny thing about Carlos is if any of you follow him on social media, he's very much into golf. I think the Carlando special duo is also always talking about golf, and so I think that's another thing that I see him do a lot with his father. So I guess it's not just the racing that he's picked up from him.
Yep, and I'm sure we're going to talk about a bit more about science, considering yesterday. Last but not the least, we have someone who's been on our show quite a few times. Welcome back after a long time, Kazim.
Thanks, Vivek. So I think, since I don't know a lot about F1 histories, my father-son duo would be the one that has been already mentioned. That is, I wouldn't go for a traditional father-son duo, but it's more like the godfather-son duo, which is of Sebastian Vettel and Mick Schumacher. Because I've been following them, and the relationship they share with each other is like, it's in a more in a, I mean, it's nice how to see, like Sebastian, how he cares for Mick Schumacher, like he mentors him, and he also, watches over him, like how Schumacher did for him. So it's nice to see that being repaid, I would say. Yeah, it's nice to see that.
Or paid forward, right? Like as they say.
Yeah.
And this is just a handful of father-son duos. There are a lot more. We'll put a link up in our YouTube comment section, so you can go check them out. The Hill family, Verstappen family, just a lot more. Also, speaking of Children's Day and the new kid on the block, Lando Norris, happy birthday to you. Fun weekend. Let's see what birthday present Brazil has lined up for him. But considering the last week we did our first pre-race session, which meant our panelists were put on the spot. They had to come up with predictions. And surprise, surprise, or maybe not a surprise, a lot of their predictions, leave aside some of the more outrageous ones, did come true based on technicalities, whether you're talking about the odd number lane, all the cars facing traction over there, and we saw how Verstappen was able to pull ahead. Toto smiling means Mercedes not winning. Race drivers, home track, not a good combination. Right? We had quite a few predictions come true. And I want to, clap for our panelists for coming up with those predictions. Any thoughts that you guys have from the predictions last week and the race that finally went through?
I mean, I think it was rather easy to predict last week's race, considering not much really changed on the track. I don't think it's a track that suits overtaking too much. So I guess the predictions did, a lot of them turned out to be true because of that particular reason as well.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I think we also had mentioned that most of the drama would happen in the first lap, and that's pretty much what happened.
Yeah.
Vignesh, anything from your perspective?
So from my perspective, I would just say that, okay, Mexico has always been a kind of a double whammy. If the season is like unpredictable, it gives a blender of a race. But if it's a normal dry weather across the week, that's when you can predict a lot. It was once again a Red Bull favoring track. So as you can see, Red Bull won, and over and out, I believe that most of the people here might have switched off after first lap and tried to switch on at the penultimate lap.
That, I think, pretty much summarizes the race. If anyone was looking for highlights, that's pretty much the sections that you want to focus on. Kazim, any thoughts from your end from last week's race?
I mean, the only thing that was pretty interesting was that, I was actually seeing the race on my bed because it was already pretty late. And the only thing I was actually hoping was that, I would see a little bit more of the Hamilton and Perez wheel-to-wheel racing that happened in Turkey. I was expecting that to happen more, but that didn't come through. So that was what I was expecting. But other than that, it was kind of a, I don't want to say it, but like, because we have seen a lot of exciting races, it was kind of a boring race.
Yeah, I mean, compared to all the excitement that's happening around the race seemed a little drab from that perspective. Last but not the least, Nären, your thoughts?
Well, the only thing that I expected that I also told last week was if you see, apart from the racing lane, there was a lot of dust and dirt that was accumulated on the track. So probably if somebody is looking for the gaps, trying to overtake, they might spin. So that is something that fortunately did not happen during this race. And the last race was more. It was not more like a race. It was more like a lullaby. After 6-9 race, if you see the race, you either would go to sleep because it's so much of it's too late for us, But I was expecting that Perez might overtake Hamilton to go for the second, because he was probably 6 tenths closer on the last lap. There was a gap between 6 tenths between him and Hamilton. So that made me get awake on my bed. My dad got surprised that you are awake at 2 a.m. in the morning for nothing. But unfortunately, things got the way it has to be.
Makes sense. By the way, this is also a shout out for Rahul, who had commented on our YouTube channel, wanting to hear what all our panelists think about the race based on their predictions. If you folks watching have any questions for our panelists, feel free to put it up on our YouTube channel and we will get back to you on the show, after the show, whichever way works. Today's episode, we're going to change things up a bit. The reason being that I really want to get to F fundamentals, the section that we talk about the basics of F1, because that will form the basis of our conversation for this weekend. And I am going to put someone on the spot who's very close to the automobile industry from his day-to-day life perspective to sort of tell the rest of us, what is this DRS that people are talking about?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the compliment of making me closer to the automobile industry. DRS is basically drag reduction system, where it was basically invented or properly incorporated in the year 2011 in Formula 1. The idea is to increase the speed increase the straight line speed of the car by around 10 to 12 kph. Thereby, if you have someone who's racing in front of you, and if you're within 1 second, if you have within 1 second of the gap before the car, this will help you to overtake the car easily. And depending upon the complexity of the circuit, there might be 1 or 2 DRS based on how the track is laid and what is the where are the straight lines that are there in the track. So this is drag reduction system, probably in simple terms.
But that is super helpful. Anyone else on the panel wants to add on top of that?
Yeah, so drag reduction always helps in overtakings, as said by my fellow panelists. But another feature about drag reduction is that when you have a DRS enabled, your opponent is sitting like a duck. He has no options to actually overtake you or defend you because your speed is way, way higher than that. Also, a fun fact is that the teams have different configurations for different circuits based on the type of circuits, because of which a drag reduction can give you, in some circuits, might give you more than 30 kilometers per hour of extra speed advantage. All these depend on the size of the wing. So how an F1 car starts it is using a flap at the back end of the car, which is the rear wing, where on a button which has been pressed by the driver when he has a permission for the DRS, the flap opens up, makes a parallel to the body of the monocoque, and by this way the air flows straight into the rear wings and creating a drag, which creating a lift, reducing the drag, because of which the car gets more speed. Normally, an FIA mandates that such a thing needs to be of a specific limitations and regulations, which the team needs to follow, or else they would get a very high advantage over their competitors on the drag side. Also, there are, as my co-host and co-panelist said, that different circuits have different number of zones. Monaco, I believe, has 1, and the highest which I've seen is probably Montreal, Canada, where it has 3, with a 2 back-to-back DRS zones.
For everyone else who ever wondered like where our 11th standard, 12th standard physics would help us with, this is one of those places.
Yeah, and I think also for the sake of our the discussion that we have later, so there's actually like a slight difference here. So there are regulations about how wide the DRS system can be, but there are technical directives about the minimum and the maximum width that it has to be open. So for example, when it's closed, I think it's 10 millimeters, and when it's open, it's 85 millimeters, but that's a technical directive more than a regulatory requirement. So it's like best to have at best.
Yep. And the reason why Twinkle brought that up is specifically because we had a lot of controversy this weekend. A certain superstar started at the back of the grid for this reason. And I know, Nären, you have put your hand up, so do you want to chime in here?
Yeah, I just read about, just to add on to what Twinkle said, the maximum width between the opening of the wing and the fixed wing is 50 millimeters. So that's how much the rear wing can open, so the air can flow through. And Kazim is a little confused, but 50 millimeters is the regulation.
It's actually 85 millimeters, 10 millimeter and 85 millimeter. If you read the
Isn't
FIA
it a maximum
document,
of 85 millimeters?
85,
Because I was actually reading the regulation as well.
Probably
yeah, it is
read the
85.
document wrong. Probably initially it would have 50 millimeters, and then they made it 85 millimeters. I'm not sure, but 50 millimeters is where I read.
Yeah,
And
it's
there
So
are
I
actually
believe
multiple specifications.
they have a gauge of 85 millimeters, and
Yeah.
when the stewards test it, the gauge shouldn't go through. And
Yeah.
I think I was also reading the regulations quite a bit. I mean, not the regulations per se, whatever the verdict that came out of the stewards. So they were saying, like, in the middle portion of the DRS wing, Mercedes's wing actually passed the test, while in the outer portion it didn't pass. So it was actually said like it's a one-off thing that happened, and that Mercedes were not cheating, and it could be due to some error, some fixing of the bolts or something. So they were pretty much not sure why. I mean, what led to that, but then again, it was agreed upon that it was not an intentional mistake or something. So that's why I believe Hamilton just got away with disqualification only from qualifying, or otherwise it would have been a harsher penalty, I guess.
I believe Crosby told in the over the commentary that they would have probably missed to fix the bolts or something over the rear wing, that what made the flap go more than 85 mm, probably violating the regulations.
Yeah, it can be an adjustment error actually. So while we're on that subject, so I know Vivek, we wanted to come to that gradually, but I know that we're already on it. So I guess I'll just brief on what really happened. So over the weekend, after the qualifying, there was a little bit of ruckus created about how Hamilton actually outqualified Max by 0.4 of a second, and to claim pole for the sprint qualifying basically. And essentially what happened was, as all other competitive teams would do, people raised their voices against the rear wing that Mercedes was using. And so what turned out was, like we were talking about the technical directive, which mentions that it can be at max 85 millimeters. So there were certain tests done by the stewards on the rear wings, and they noticed that, like Kazim was saying as well, so in the middle of the wing, the 10-ton gauge was passing through, but then at the end of the wings, it was not really passing through, which is where they failed the technical directive. So they actually had a lot of back and forth with the Mercedes technical teams around this subject, and they figured that it could have been an adjustment problem, or there could have been a problem with the way the pivoting was done. And since these cars go through multiple rigorous testings before each race, so FIA also confirmed that before each other races, they've not seen this anomaly. So this is definitely a one-off thing. It's not intentional. And I think the other person who got caught amidst this was Max, because for some reason he just wanted to go and touch Hamilton's rear wing in park firm conditions, and that's not allowed. That's illegal, which is why he was given a fine of 50 grand. So Yeah, they've also specified in the report that FIA has published, they've specified that it's definitely not Max who'd hampered the rear wings, because that would take Thor's strengths to actually bend it to any more than what was permissible. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to like pause here, and I know Vignesh, you wanted to say something. I'll let you
Yeah.
chime in.
So I just wanted to say that since we are talking on the concept of the rear wings and DRS, I just wanted to tell to our viewers that not every time the DRS system goes well as planned. For those who don't remember, you should go to Marcus Ericsson's crash in the Monza, and it was a 20G crash, and that was caused because of the DRS end plate being opened at the time when he was taking the turn at Monza's turn 1, and that led to a very horrific crash. So for that reason is why these technical regulations are put into place, and not for some fancy reason of just thwarting a team from winning. It's for the purpose of safety why we have all these technical regulations, and that was evident with Marcus Ericsson's crash. So for those who feel that okay, Lewis Hamilton was punished on and just a whims, it's not. It's for the safety of the driver, and that is why the decision was taken by the stewards.
Thanks, Vignesh. That's actually a very excellent point that you brought across. And as all our panelists have highlighted, I know the F1 gossip columns had a field day, and they just stoked the controversy between RB and Mercedes. But a couple of things to reiterate to everyone. This was a technical challenge caused as a one-off, operating environment issue versus a design flaw that or a design hack that Mercedes was trying. And these tests have happened multiple times, which they have passed through. This is the first time they sort of failed through. So they believe it was because of the environment. And hence, Hamilton just got, he had to be at the back of the sprint qualifying. And that actually made it a lot more exciting for a lot of us fans. But we'll get into that in a bit. And the second thing is, Max Verstappen was celebrating Children's Day. Children are inquisitive, want to play around with stuff. You shouldn't be touching stuff. And obviously he got penalized for that. 50,000 euros is what he's been penalized as a fine. You're not supposed to touch around. And even if he did, right, it is not possible, humanly possible, to really screw around with that entire setup when they're going around so many G's on a track. That itself is not able to impact the entire setup. So a mere human doing that is not possible. So whatever controversy you're hearing about him having tried to make it tough for the Mercedes, nothing there. It was just a kid who shouldn't have been doing stuff that he should be. Vignesh, you have something on your...
Yeah, so speaking about Max Verstappen, I do understand from where he has got that view of touching the cars or the rear wing. It's because probably he was inspired by Sebastian Vettel, who we call him in multiple roles. One of his role is the inspector. He inspects the car after every race, and in that way probably he might have. And to which I believe after the sprint race, there was a cheeky dig from Sebastian Vettel as posted in the Formula One, where he says, okay, I'm going to touch Hamilton's car, and his engineer says, please don't, it's going to be costly. And he says, no, I'm not going to touch the rear wing. I'll try the front wing, might be 25 grand. That is Sebastian Vettel for you guys. And Max, he is a 4-time world champion. You are a kid. He just observes and he gives us a report. He doesn't touch and give. So yeah, you can take that precaution from next time.
There was also a cheeky dig from Bono, I guess. He also asked Lewis to not touch anybody's cars on his way back.
Yep. Kazim.
Okay.
So yeah, I was actually, the internet is a very funny place, and I was going through the comments when this whole thing came about, saying that Max Verstappen touched the rear wing. So every comment I saw, I was actually telling that, this is why he's called Supermax. He can do anything. He can bend wings. He can just go around and, he can put a force that is much greater to actually bend the wing or something. So it was actually quite funny to go through the comments. So that is one thing I usually do. When you go through the comments, you you unearth a lot of, you unearth the Pandora's box. There are good and bad things.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if the Marvel Cinematic Universe does a crossover and we have playing a role there. But this was all the drama around the qualifying and the sprint qualifying. What about the drama in the qualifying? Right? What are your opinions about the sprint race that we had yesterday? And we could probably start off with Kazim again.
So, I mean, the sprint qualifying yesterday was actually, it didn't have a really great start. I thought like the race was going to be boring, but then again, I got proven wrong, and we had a really good race till the 24 laps that came to an end. Hamilton was on fire. Bottas had a really great start, and I believe one part that I really loved was, Sainz getting all the TV time that he was being neglected so far. Like he was being showed so many times on TV. I was like, I mean, this couldn't be F1 or something like that. But yeah, Sainz was actually driving. He was driving real good, and I think this was one of the races where Hamilton actually showed why he's a 7-time world champion, and he gets a better car because he is a really good driver. Yeah, that's what I thought.
That's a nice quick summary. Twinkle, from your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I was almost done with sprint races. I didn't want to sit through another one, but then yesterday proved to be extraordinary. Who had expected Bottas to get away? I mean, it is sort of a Mercedes. It is a better track for Mercedes, but I didn't really expect him to pull through. And then even when I think Max was closing in on him at the 16th lap, I think 16th, 17th lap, when he was closing in on him, I really thought that he's going to catch up. But the way he defended was absolutely brilliant. There was also the overtake on Leclerc by Lando, which is a birthday gift to himself. I think that was a brilliant overtake. It was so daring and it was so bold. I loved that overtake. And of course, there's Hamilton and his magic. Yesterday proved his mettle and the pedigree that he has coming into the sport.
Yep. Nären, how about you?
Two things I would like to point out with respect to Paris, because everybody is talking about Hamilton, everybody is talking about Lando. So I would like to talk about Perez and Verstappen specifically. So if you see during turn 6, Perez was actually 20 kph or 6 kph slower at the apex than his car, his predecessor was Sainz. And Verstappen was 13 kph, somewhere around 13 kph slower than Bottas. So this is what made them to not go in front, because turn 6 is where you get the big stoppage and you go beyond. That was when most of the people would probably take a turn. That was where most of the people didn't take a chance. That is number one. And number two is I would specifically take this into consideration. That is the overtake of Hamilton over Norris. And that deserves a special round of appreciation, and that deserves not just appreciation, but a BGM also, because the way in which he overtook Norris at that particular turn is outstanding. So there's no words about what a great driver is. Apart from all the hatred that he's been receiving, you still can't take away the talent out of him.
Yeah, I think yesterday, from a pure F1 fan perspective, even if you're like a Hami hater, I think yesterday he just showed the class, the mettle, and the science behind being a brilliant F1 driver. Like, there was a formula to his madness, and he just replicated it, fine-tuned it as he went through each. And I feel that experience that he got yesterday is going to make today's race a lot more exciting, even though he has that penalty, which is why, even though he finished off at 5th, he will be starting the race at 10th and probably line up a lot more excitement for all of us watching the race tonight. Before we move on to the next topic, Vignesh, your thoughts on.
So there was a point of time when I had lost hope with sprint races. Yesterday, it brought my faith back in sprint races first. The second thing is yesterday's sprint race drew many parallels to 2008 Brazilian GP, especially when in the last lap when Hamilton overtook Norris. I was getting that. Is that Timo Glock? Glock is slowing down, and that was the feel I was getting. When Bottas won, I had the feel of Massa winning, but again Hamilton coming fifth to snatch a championship from him, basically giving him more credit than his Mercedes teammate is another parallels which I drew. Also the racecraft. At some point of time, I was seeing my screens and I saw Nikita Mazepin giving a similar timing as Hamilton, and I was like, this guy might be the future of F1. A great driver, probably, but now he is one of the most underrated drivers. So yesterday, the sprint race brought a lot of character for a lot of drivers. Bottas showed his grit back. Max Verstappen, as usual, his aggression. Perez, his defense. Leclerc, what your drive from him. Hamilton, a phenomenal drive of a 7-time world champion. And as usual, we have Lando, who was marrying his way on a birthday weekend.
Yeah, and I think just one last point to this, I guess. At the end, I think Crofty or someone mentioned that this man has been all over the track. So none of his overtakes, even if they were on the same corner, none of them were. He didn't pull the same move twice yesterday while he overtook those 15 people. So yeah, that truly adds to the point of the science of his racecraft.
Also, probably, I believe that he would take yesterday's race as probably like a practice for today's race. He knows that from 20th, if he can come 5th, he also knows from 10th, he can come first.
Yeah, in 24 laps.
Yes.
Yeah. And
I hope
the toughest part of our show for all of you is predictions for today.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope.
I'm gonna.
I hope the Mercedes doesn't double stack and do the same issue that they did last year.
Oh yeah, that was a clumsy one.
So,
Yeah,
yeah. Yes, please.
I'm going to go very bold. I'm going to predict a Hamilton win.
Okay.
I think I am gonna go further and say like I'm expecting a Hamilton Verstappen crash for some reason.
Oh shit!
Because
No.
I don't know, because I think like the Verstappen is leading with the championship, and I feel like this is the race where they might be trying to push a little bit over the line, and they might just go overhead or something.
Monza,
I feel like
Silverstone.
there's a possibility that it might happen. I just hope it doesn't happen, but like I feel like I don't know why I have this feeling like it might happen.
I can't fight on Twitter any longer, man.
Okay, so
For everyone else trying to figure that out, what Kazim just said, basically the guy who's at second place on the grid is going to meet the guy who's at 10th place. And they're potentially going to have a crash because each one knows what is at stake and is going to push that bit harder. We know that this track is generally tough for overtaking. We thought it was almost impossible, but Hami showed that it isn't. And he's, as Twinkle mentioned, he's tried out all the variations, so he knows which one would work with which driver. So he's potentially is going to meet Verstappen on the track unless the strategy plays out and they don't. And if that happens, we might see a crash. If we don't, Twinkle suggests that, Hami is actually going to be winning the race. Let's hear what the other panelists also have to say from their prediction standpoint. Vignesh, you want to go in?
Yeah, so I say that since the gap between Hamilton and Verstappen is around 20-ish odd points, more than 20 plus, I would like to go with this prediction that, okay, Bottas crashes into Verstappen. Hamilton wins, the 25 points are covered and they win. Now, probably, if not that, I might see a Red Bull going to a DNF. That might be Max Verstappen. The reason is Mercedes have used recent engines and they can push how much ever hard they want to. They can go to their limit because this is the fourth ICE, I believe, and they only have over 3 or 4 races left. They can push as much as they want, but if Red Bull try to push it, they might have to use the engine, and which they don't want to, or else Verstappen might get a penalty and the championship might go haywire. So if they start to push, might be a DNF or Bottas purposefully taking Max. I wouldn't say purposefully, but yeah, just taking it by a driver accident and giving Hamilton the championship standing win. And also that helps Mercedes considering they also propel higher in the championship order.
This is the real
I have
conspiracy
a-
theory, guys.
I have another
Yeah.
prediction actually, amidst the carnage, if that actually ends up happening, all the crashes. Hopefully Lando gets its first win, and it might be the best birthday present he has ever gotten.
So far, we are hoping he's the future. He's going to get a lot more birthday presents for himself.
Yeah,
But
yeah, so
yeah,
far. Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised seeing all the drama that we have seen over the last few weeks. Anything's possible. And the crazier the predictions, the higher the probability they might just happen. Nären, what do you think?
My prediction would be like how Twinkle said, it's a very bold prediction, but yes, Hamilton can pull it. But if you also see, there is high chance of a lot of overtaking that is happening. So if you are a car that is faster on straight lines, then this might be the circuit for you, because we have seen a lot of overtakes in the start-finish line. And the second thing is that if you see the time interval between the second and third, it was almost like 17 seconds. But between first and second, it was close to 6 tenths, and third and fourth was somewhere close to 7 tenths. So I'm seeing a bit of a hollow circle that is happening between first and second and third and fourth. I'm not sure why, but considering all that has happened yesterday, Ferraris have been really strong in their pace yesterday. So if you see the move that probably Sainz took at the start, it was a brilliant move. I am seeing Sainz coming up in the top 3, apart from the obvious.
I think I
Actually,
have an
to
explanation
back
for.
up,
Sorry, go ahead.
actually to back up Nären, I was also thinking there's a possibility of a Ferrari double podium as well. If that happens, that's going to be good.
This
Well,
is where
well,
I'm
Kazim-
more excited if that happens.
I like Kazim's prediction of having Lando Norris and Ferrari double podium. It's the boldest prediction I've ever seen.
It matches with the crash also happening. Sorry, Twinkle, you had something to chime in.
Yeah, no, I was just saying. So I think to add to Naren's point, I think he was saying that there was a lot of difference between the second and the third place. That was actually because I don't think Ferrari had the pace. He had, I think Sainz pulled an excellent defense, which was why he was still third. He wouldn't have been third otherwise. He was actually holding off the rest of the group, to be very fair. But I don't think he had the pace. I think he had excellent defense yesterday, which is why the huge gap.
But I believe Sainz was saying on the radio that he was struggling with tires after, say, 16th or 17th lap. But then the defense that he pulled over Perez is amazing.
Yeah, 12th lap
Finally-
actually.
Finally,
Mid
Sainz
race.
learned the Hamilton way. My tires are gone, and he starts defending better.
Yeah, no, and I think obviously what did help was the track temperature stayed much lower than expected. So the degradation that a lot of soft tires were expected to go through didn't happen as fast as we thought it would. And obviously these drivers did a much better job of defending. So I think for me yesterday was some solid defense and obviously brilliant offense by this one person, Hamilton, that summarized the sprint qualifying yesterday. We're going to see a super exciting race today. You guys have already heard some very crazy predictions. Some of them that make me super, super happy if they come true. But overall, I'm sure it's going to be a very exciting race. And looking forward to seeing the madness that will unfold tonight. And for everyone else tuning in, we'll be back next week because F1 continues from a triple decker weekend after weekend, and we move to the Middle East. Hopefully a much more saner time for Indian viewers. The race will be at 7:30 p.m. IST on Sunday next weekend, after the last few weekends where everyone's sort of gone into graveyard shift to be able to watch the race. Tonight it is at 10:30 p.m. IST. Hopefully you all tune in and verify whether our panelists have got their predictions right and to what extent. Once again, thank you to all our panelists, Nären, Vignesh, Twinkle, Kazim, for coming on board, sharing your insights, your excitement. Looking forward to another excellent session next week. Thanks a lot, everyone. Any last words from anyone before we close out?
May the best team win.
And also, hopefully, we see a little rain.
And hopefully there is no crash.
Yes, hopefully there's no crash. At least rain, at least.
And
But
probably
maybe
I want,
hopefully there is some crash for our predictions to come true.
and probably I want this race to be one of the best, because probably from next year the thing is going to shift. Brazil circuit is going to be shifted, so I want the last final race in this Interlagos to be memorable.
I am sure with all that we have seen so far, and like we highlighted at the start of the show, Netflix writers are collaborating with F1, or F1 is getting their homework done for them. So looking forward to a fun race. Thanks a lot, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, guys.